Good evening, everybody, and welcome to the Rare Book Room. My name is Peter, and I'll direct the events here at Strand. For a little bit of history, Strand was founded in 1927 by Benjamin Bass over on what was then 4th Avenue's Book Row. Stretching from Union Square to Astor Place, Book Row gradually dwindled from 48 bookstores until after over 93 years, Strand is the sole survivor, now run by third-generation owner Nancy Bass Wyden. Under Nancy, the Strand is not only surviving in an increasingly competitive and unsure environment, but it is thriving. We continue to hold 18 miles of new and used books, host nearly 400 events a year, and in large part, this is all thanks to you. So give yourselves a round of applause. And please keep it going for Emma Lord, who we are very excited to have with us tonight for the release of Tweet Cute. Emma is a digital media editor and writer living here in New York City, and we could not be more thrilled to be helping launch her first novel. Joining her to do so is Cristina Arreola, a returning Strand guest who has hosted numerous conversations here with authors like Orange is the New Black's Diane Guerrero, the Spiderwick Chronicles author Holly Black, and plenty more, and written about books for Elle, Bustle, Book of the Month, and plenty others. With all that said, without further ado, please join me in welcoming Emma and Cristina to the Strand.
Thank you guys so much for being here today at Strand Bookstore for the launch celebration of Tweet Cute by Emma Lord. I've done a lot of these launches in my career, and I have to say that this is probably the most special one that I've ever done and the one that I'm most excited to do. Emma and I have been friends for a long time. We were coworkers for a long time with desks right next to each other. We had matching grilled cheeses. And, you know, we've spent many, many hours writing together, reading together, and just talking about books we've read, books we want to read, books we want to write. And so it's really, really special to be here today to see her launch her first novel because I know how hard she worked to get here. So before we even begin, let's just give her the hugest round of applause that you can muster. Awesome. So I had this whole summary of Tweet Cute that's like 2 paragraphs long. And then, of course, I was on Twitter earlier today and I saw Emma had a way better summary of it. So I'm going to read hers. Pepper, the heiress of a major fast food franchise, and Jack, whose family owns a deli, start a viral Twitter war over a stolen grilled cheese sandwich recipe, all the while secretly falling in love on an anonymous chat app that Jack secretly built. So let's start with the basics. What was the inspiration for Tweet Cute?
So some of you guys already know this, but the inspiration was kind of an accident. I tweeted the idea as a joke back in like the Thanksgiving break of 2017, and we went, my sister and I and my mom and I went to go see a show, and when we came back, the tweet had like picked up a lot of like retweets and from book Twitter, and everybody was like, oh, this should be a book. And then about 2 hours later, I was like, oh, I should call dibs on that and write it. So that's sort of how it happened in the beginning. I initially was going to try to write it as just like a straight romance, for more like contemporary adult romance. But then somebody was like, you should write this as a YA book. And that's sort of how Pepper and Jack were born.
So how different does the first draft of this book look from, you know, what's going on shelves today?
I guess not too wildly different, but it is extremely different from the first chapters that I attempted. In the version that there is now, there's an app that Jack, the main character, helped build that the school is sort of using anonymously, so everybody can kind of like cluster and like help each other with their homework and sort of like use it as like, there's like a thing on it called the hallway chat, so kids can bond. And initially it was just gonna be like this big dating app that somebody like, you know, in their mid to late 20s would have invented. So I feel like that was sort of the biggest thing that's changed from like the initial conception, but the stolen grilled cheese recipe was there from the very beginning.
So in addition to grilled cheese, there's also a lot of baked goods in this book. when did those start to make their appearance in the drafts? And how did so Pepper has she creates her own recipes. How did that come about?
Honestly, I think there's kind of like this joke about people who are in like the 5 a.m. writers club who get up and write. And I think the desserts just started coming in. The more sleep deprived and delirious I was, the more ridiculous the desserts got. I was like, I think at that point it was, probably the fourth or fifth like full manuscript I'd attempted, and I was sort of just like go for broke, like put all the yummy things in this. And so that's sort of how that happened. And my sisters and I really like to bake, so I think and visit like every single bakery in New York. If you give me any cross streets, I can tell you the closest 5 bakeries to you at any given time. So that was sort of the impetus for that too.
All right, 13th and Broadway.
Baked by Melissa. I mean, like, if we're also going for like just like regular ones, we've got Panera, we've got the Oblong Pan.
There's a lot of places to get
There's
cookies.
a Max Brenner.
And one of the things I loved is that all of the desserts are actually like really fleshed out as actual desserts. Tell us about that process. What was it like creating these desserts for your book?
I think it's important for desserts to have the same multitudes that your characters do when you're writing about it. I guess for me, it's just sort of coming up with them I liked the idea of using desserts as kind of like a plot device to some degree, because I feel like desserts have been sort of the motivations of a lot of the important things that have happened in my life. It's just sort of just always been like a bonding thing to either be baking or go hunting for things or like tag each other in like really ridiculous desserts on Instagram. So I think that was sort of part of why they were so complicated. And I don't know, I feel like I'm very specific. I have very specific taste buds. And so I was like, I can't lie. I did not make any of the desserts. I made some of the desserts like that were like the sex positive brownies and like things that most people make. But Monster Cake, I did not attempt until like after the book sold. And that was sort of like a moment where we were like, oh, like we better figure this out. But it works. There's a recipe now online. It's all came together.
And how does it taste? I'm looking at Lily, who's Emma's sister.
Yeah, so good, unbelievable. We've got the early reviews in.
Amazing. So I'm going to backtrack a little bit because I meant to ask you this right when we sat down and then I got nervous. But can you tell us a little bit about what you are wearing today and how it relates to the book?
My outfit? Why, I'd love to. I very dweebly custom ordered this on Etsy like a year ago, and it says #pepperjack on the front here, and then it's got the date of this date on the sleeve, and then my shoes I can show you guys later. I was about to like get up and jump, but that would be disastrous. My shoes say my name on the back of them, and I'm very pleased about them. So I feel like I've been planning this outfit for a long time. I'm very excited.
Awesome. So a couple of days ago, I asked my Instagram followers if they had any questions for you, and we got a lot of really great questions. So periodically throughout, this hour, I will be inserting some of those. So this is a question from our friend Susie, who used to work at Bustle. And she wants to know, how did your role as a fanfic writer and avid member of the community influence this book and your journey to becoming a published writer?
What a very Susie question. I think for me, fanfiction was, I think the biggest mark of that was just this book is just full of all of my like favorite romantic tropes. I love a good secret identity. I love a good, like enemies to lovers kind of trope. And so that got just like aggressively shoved into this manuscript. But I think a lot of it was just, I think when you're a fan fiction writer and you're just sort of writing because you love it, it sort of made it a lot easier to continue writing. Like, I think if you don't have that basis, there's like a little bit of like, what am I doing this for when like books don't sell, or like you're nervous about them selling or things like that. But I think because of the fan fiction, I was like, I was doing this for free anyway, so I might as well just keep going. But, I think it was also just really great for like figuring out what dynamics you like to write and kind of how people will respond to them. Because right away if people don't like them because they just will ignore you. So yeah, it's just a really supportive community in general. So that was kind of like a nice thing to start out young.
Yeah, and I think that one of the things that has always impressed and baffled me about you and your writing is how you always seem to take such joy in it. And I would be like, oh my God, this is such a slog. Like I really like have to force myself to do this. And you were always like, oh, I'm so excited to get this done because then I can go home and write fan fiction. And you just like had like such a sense of joy and wonder about it. When did you start writing fan fiction? And was that something that sort of developed for you, that sense of joy?
I started writing it kind of by accident. I really loved Lord of the Rings, specifically Merry and Pippin. I thought they were the coolest. And I would get these big yellow legal pads and I would just like secretly like write in them. And at some point, our sister Maddie, who's coming to the Virginia launch, but she's in Seattle right now, was like, this is actually like a thing people are doing online and you can like post about it. So that's kind of how it started. And then the first thing I did was obviously a self-insert Harry Potter fan fiction where I was dating Harry Potter. Because why not? My eyes weren't purple though, so. It was just sort of like kicked off from there. For every few years there was like some fandom I was like super into. It was Charmed for a long time, Scrubs weirdly for a while, Spider-Man definitely, yeah, so it just sort of was like I think there were a few times that I was like, oh, I've grown out of this, like I haven't had to do this in a while, and then another Spider-Man movie comes out and I'm right back in. So that's sort of how that's continued.
So you're still writing, I mean, I know this, but you're still writing fan fiction.
Possibly. Anonymously, but yes.
If anyone finds it, tag me. So, as you mentioned, you're a big fan of tropes and fan fiction and rom-coms and books. You listed a few of them, but what are some of the tropes that, readers can expect from this book? And what were some of the ones that you really had fun playing around with?
I think the most fun was the enemies to lovers one. I like the secret identity one a lot too. I don't know if this is like tropey, but I kind of tried to like put as much like friendship stuff into it. Gosh, I've like forgotten all the tropes that I know. I feel like the trope of like heroine lives in New York City is sort of just like also like, and like likes to bake. Like
yeah, liking to bake is definitely one. Yeah, I think enemies to lovers is like one that we have both loved for a long time. I think friends to lovers is so boring, honestly.
Yeah,
like childhood friends. Miss me with it. But like, are there any nods to rom-coms in this book? I mean, it keeps getting compared to You've Got Mail, which,
I think for sure, yeah. You've Got Mail. I feel like a little bit The Hating Game, like just in terms of like, she was the one who introduced me to that and that like semi-donate path of like rom-com books. Other ones, I mean, I guess like it's sort of like a big baby of like every New York rom-com I ever watched, which is a lot of them. So I think it was just sort of like a fun combo of that. And also just, when you're walking down the street and you're in New York and you're listening to your headphones and they're noise canceling, you think you're in a rom-com all the time. So I feel like it was like a little bit of that too.
Yeah, and I feel like there's also, with the anonymous chat app, a lot of parallels to a book that we both really love, which is Tell Me Three Things by Julie Buxbaum, which if you guys love this book, you should definitely go out and buy that one. It's so sweet if you love like the anonymous aspect of it. But I love that you mentioned New York and that feeling of like always being in your like own little movie or rom-com. Like I have soundtracks, like this is me in a cartoon. This is me in my own rom-com. Why did you, you're not from here. You're originally from Seattle and, you lived in Nashville, you lived in Virginia, and some of that is also in the book. Why did you choose to set it in New York City and specifically on the Upper East Side?
I think part of it was the convenience of I could have the setup being this like big fast food franchise and like a beloved deli, it was sort of set the scene and set the stakes a little higher. But I also think for me at that point, I had written a lot of other books that have not seen the light of day. But I had written some that were set in Seattle. I had written some that were set in New York, and I'd written some that were set in Virginia. I'm making it sound like there's like a whole graveyard. They were like more like 4 or 5. But I loved writing about New York the most. And I think at that point, when I was writing Tweet Cute, I just had a feeling about it in a different way that I had about the other books, just because there was this initial reaction online. And it was like a weird way to like see a preview into like how a book might exist in the world before it even was like any words were in it. And I guess for me, I was like, if I'm going to make this book the big guilty pleasure book that I want to write, where it's just like full of desserts and full of grilled cheeses and these like 2 Hufflepuff teens, I'm going to like set it in the, like, it was like just like straight junk food for my brain writing it. And I was like, I want to have it set in New York because I love it here so much. Like, yeah, New York.
Yeah, and I think so. I live on the Upper East Side. You also live on the Upper East Side. And I think one of the things that I loved about it is I feel like when you think about Upper East Side in media, it's like always portrayed as this like mecca of wealth and glamour, and like Blair Waldorf lives there. And then you go to the Upper East Side and it has like more Taco Bells per capita than any place else I've lived. It's really great. And it is like this place where there's like so many great bakeries and like all these like great places to eat. And I love the way that you sort of like brought your version of New York into it. And I mean, that just seems like it was really fun to write. Yeah. And one of the questions, actually, I was going to save this for later, but a fan question from Sam Rulo was, what are the best cheese dishes on the Upper East Side?
Oh my God. I feel like this is cheating, but I want to say the mac and cheese at Maison Kaiser like is probably a great one. I've had a really good grilled cheese on the Upper East Side, and I feel like it was at the writing room, and I feel like it was not on the menu, and I feel like it was something that I asked for, that they were like, we will accommodate you. I'm like, I've suddenly forgotten all of the cheese dishes. Oh, we just went to that Eli's Night Shift, and they had the best grilled cheese I've ever, okay, I say that about every grilled cheese, but they had very phenomenal grilled cheese. Lily, can you think of any? Yeah, Sam Rulo, are you here? I can put you on the spot. What's yours? Yeah. Uva. Yeah. You can't really go wrong. The restaurants on the Upper East Side are very millennial.
We'll do a cheese tour. We'll put it on Instagram stories.
Yeah.
Stay tuned. So my questions are broken up into sections, and I don't know what I was thinking. It goes from tropes and romance, location and scene, to capitalist critiques. But I was reading this, the Democratic primary is happening, and it really does feel like, there is something to be said here about this big business taking on this small little deli. We all live in New York. We know how sad it is when, for example, Double Wide Bar and Grill closes, which had amazing grilled cheese.
It did.
And, a bank gets put there instead. So why was that something that you kind of wanted to play around with in this book, that, dynamic of the big business taking on the small guy? And how did you manage to still keep Pepper, who, is the fast food heiress, sympathetic despite that? Because, that's a tough position to put her in.
I was actually super worried about that because I feel like there's just like a lot of like, you when you're writing YA, you like want your characters to like be relatable and sympathetic, and I was like, ooh, but I guess definitely the inspiration for it is the bummer of watching things close down. And I kind of wanted to write something where, a business that was struggling kind of got this, it's this isn't a spoiler to be like the Twitter war obviously kind of puts them on the map in this big way where suddenly they've got the upper hand. And so I kind of wanted that kind of like optimistic, joyful, like there is a way to triumph over that kind of thing. And in terms of Pepper, the one thing that I was I did get to stick to my roots a little bit on the Nashville thing, because I kind of wanted it to be that this big fast food chain of theirs was so fairly recent in its boom that she was there for like the very first one, and it was like a small family thing that they never meant to become a chain, and then it sort of just explodes so fast that even they're like, how did we get from like point A to point Z? So you not only see, I feel like, you know, you see the consequences of this like big Goliath, you know, taking advantage of other smaller businesses, but you also sort of like get to peel the curtain back and be like, ooh, like, you know, this is sometimes why people don't necessarily think that what they're doing is wrong. So yeah, I would say that was sort of the balance that I wanted to strike with those.
Yeah, and trying not to, I don't think this is too much of a spoiler, but a lot of the reason that Pepper does it is because she sort of has this complicated dynamic with her mom, who's the CEO and founder, and who really wants her to, you know, go after them and to, like, you know, be the big guy on social media. And I really think that her relationship with her mom is so interesting, and it's just so textured and so dynamic. And what was it like sort of bringing those characters to life and bringing that relationship into focus?
I think that was just more fun than anything, because I feel like her mom was the biggest Slytherin character in the book, so I like got to like have this one like very like, my own mom is like decidedly a Ravenclaw, and like, well, I would say Gryffindor, Ravenclaw, Gryffindor, say that's more accurate. So I would say it was like the more fun one to, because I really didn't have a basis for writing her, like, because in the book, you know, Pepper's mom is this very kind of like ambitious, like, well, like kind of ruthless in her ambition. And it is just this kind of, I tried to make her comedic in some points, and I kind of thought that was just like a sort of fun thing to explore. But I also just kind of liked that dynamic of that feeling obligated toward your family. And I kind of really wanted that to come out in both of the characters, in that it was very personal for them, because it, you know, it was related to their identity and the people that they love. And so I think that was sort of what started the foundation for how I was looking at their relationship. I hate that I think of everything in terms, I don't hate it. I think of everything in terms of Hogwarts houses, but it sure does make things easier.
Yeah, and you know, there is a twist with her mom at the end, and I think that we get to see, you know, there's like an explanation a little bit for what happens, and it's this really beautiful moment that so many of the characters in the book kind of get this full circle narrative arc that I really, really enjoyed. I do want to talk about the social media aspect a little bit, because there are like real tweets in this book that I am assuming you wrote. What was that process like of, I mean, I feel like we do this all day long and it doesn't feel like art. And so kind of, you know, making it suitable for your novel and putting together these like viral tweets, and how was that process? It was, I will say, I think the tweets in some ways were the easiest part of the book, but also the hardest, because anyone who's ever composed a tweet, you either like, it comes to you like some weird little demon in your brain and you're like, oh, and you just like tweet it. Or you're like sitting in front of your computer for like 15 minutes and you're like, what's the exact syntax? And should I put a comma here? And like, you know, and like, I have to look up some meme format so I don't get it wrong. So that was, it was fun because I kind of got to go on these like deep dives on like some of the other fast food franchise Twitters and sort of look at what they were doing. But it was also a bad move because, I NaNoWriMo'd tweet cute. So I was doing 1,667 words a day, and there are like 20 words in a tweet. And it would take me like 15 minutes to come up with the tweet, and I'd be like, you did it. And now you just have to sit here for 3 more hours. Like, so that was sort of NaNoWriMo is National Novel Writing Month. And so that's sort of like a thing where you try to write 50,000 words in a month. And so I just did that with like all 85,000 words of tweet cute. So it was great because it got done fast, but it was also very confusing for my brain. Wait, you wrote 85,000 words in a month? Or
in like a month and a half. Like I just like did it at NaNoWriMo pace.
Oh my God.
It was an interesting, March of 2017 was a very interesting time to be alive for me.
It's a lot of writing. And I also think that, you know, the social media aspect of this book really, you can really see how what comes out on the social media feed is not what's happening behind the scenes. And there's some really good commentary on the way that, you know, it can be weaponized or the ways that, you know, it can be manipulated by teenagers. And was that sort of fun to play around with, you know, perception versus reality and that whole situation in the book?
Yeah. So I kind of like set out to write this book that I knew was going to be in some ways like very, very aggressively optimistic. But I kind of also wanted to keep it grounded. So it was like important for me to, in a time when social media is so aggressively weaponized a lot of the time, like, you know, I feel like there's like always some like big bad thing du jour, to sort of also peel it back and be like, hey, like we still do use it for good things. We still use it to connect with each other. You know, I think it's a discredit to the way teenagers are using social media to just sort of be like, Twitter's a garbage fire. Like, yes, there are some corners of Twitter that are decidedly on fire, but like there are some parts of them that are like really fun and beautiful and cute, and you know, people meet each other and make friends on you know, Twitter and all sorts of social media, and that was sort of what this app Weasel in the book is for also. So I think it was sort of just a mix of being like, we acknowledge that, you know, you have to be careful with what you use social media for, but if you know, I feel like with teenagers especially, it just sort of, it can be a safe haven for them in a way that, like, you know, when the rest of the world is sort of just like off running around with our heads cut off, they're sort of like, here we are coping with our memes and like making each other feel better. Like, and you know, I feel like it's a lot less isolating in some ways because you can reach a much bigger audience of people who understand what you're going through and can like validate those feelings than you would have in like, I don't know, in the 2000s when all you could do was get on, you know, AOL chat and like put like an Evanescence lyric up and be like, I'm upset. Like,
a passive aggressive cry for help.
Yeah.
Or like me on like the yellow card message boards or like
somebody ask me what's wrong.
just weird stuff. And obviously, I mean, Twitter has played a huge role in like your life and in your career. And, you know, I met my boyfriend on Twitter. And so it's like something that I think is like weirdly special to both of us. And I really just love that it's such a big part of your book because I think it's such a big part of the way that we live our lives and the way that we form friendships and the way that we fall in love. And it's really nice to kind of like see it giving that space, which seems weird to say. It's like a whatever. So another huge part of this book is the anonymous texting app, which I love because I love the anonymous trope so much. Was that in the story from the very beginning? Did that get added in? And kind of when you were drafting things out in your head, how did you decide when the reveal would be, when they would figure out that it was the other person?
Oh man, I've got to say, I think that was maybe the hardest part of writing the book was figuring out when they were gonna, I mean, just sort of like when they're talking on Twitter, they're talking on this anonymous chat app, they're talking to each other in real life. And I had to constantly be like, what does this version of Pepper know about this version of Jack? And it's like, it was like they were like 18 characters at once. And I like had this like disgustingly long Google Doc where like, it just like, I looked back at it a few weeks ago and I was like, I don't even know what this was. But the anonymous chat app was sort of, I would say there was like a very loose version of it in the beginning. And actually, I was talking the plot out with my dad, and he was the one who said, Jack has to have like a thing. Like, what's Jack's thing? And I like thought about it for a little while, and I was like, oh, like he could be building this chat app. Like that could be his thing. And that ended up playing into like every single part of the book's plot. So like, thanks, Dad. Co-written by Bill Lord.
Although I resent the fact that someone has to have a hobby.
Yeah.
Some of us just like to read.
Yeah, some of us just like to eat grilled cheese and be left alone.
And I do want to actually talk about Jack before we start doing our lightning round of questions. I think Jack is a really interesting character. He has a twin brother named Ethan, who is sort of like the golden boy. You know, I think he's student council president. He's like the dive team president. He's the one who just like everyone in the school loves. And Jack is sort of feels like he's a little bit overshadowed. And I think there's a really interesting dynamic that both Pepper and Jack have, which is that I think that their personal expectations are out of line with what everyone else expects of them, but they both think that everyone else has like really high expectations for them, if that makes sense. And so how did you sort of play around with that idea of like expectations and them kind of finding out that things aren't as dire as they are in their heads because they're teenagers?
Well, first of all, I'm a Cancer, so... And I think when I think about I would say being a teenager, but being an adult too, it's like I think there is just this like very sensitive feeling of you. I think we all think that people are thinking of us a lot more than they are. And so we like have this like standard that we set for ourselves, and it makes us very nervous all the time, even though most of the time nobody, they're all doing their own thing, worrying about themselves. And I feel like that feeling is so heightened in high school because it is sort of like, I think the last time, and thank God, that you have these very real measuring sticks of like, here's your GPA, here's your SAT, like here's the college you're going to go to. It sort of just amplifies that to a degree that you never will hopefully have to endure again. So I just remembered that a lot from high school, and that just sort of seemed like the kind of pressure that is, even though Twitter is very hyper modern and it does sort of will always date this book a little bit, I think that kind of grounding issue with like self-esteem and like not necessarily thinking that you're rising up to expectations is such an evergreen feeling that I'm hoping that that's something that grounds the book. And it's when Twitter completely changes itself again and likes turn back into faves and everything that I've written in that book gets outdated, I'm hoping that will stay the same.
Yeah, and I think that's one of the important things to remember is that they don't get into this Twitter feud just for like the sake of getting into a Twitter feud. Like they both are doing it because of these like family expectations that they perceive of their parents of having for them. And that like I think really grounds it, even though I do think that most people get into Twitter feuds just to get into Twitter feuds in real life. What are some of the books or, movies or fan fictions that you sort of turned to for inspiration when you were, creating this book and writing it?
I feel like to some degree Waitress, because there were just like a lot of really fun dessert names in that. Definitely You've Got Mail. I would say there was definitely a touch of Tell Me Three Things in there with all the anonymousness. I would say, I hate to say it, but love to say it, I would say there's like a little bit of the Spider-Man thing in there just because I needed to have like some sort of like secret identity thing. And like, I get that nobody's like saving the day, but like that was also like a thing that really drew me to Spider-Man was the New York factor of it. And I just loved also, getting to like, I always thought that was such a guilty pleasure once I'd moved here, being able to write about New York reliably for fan fiction. And I was like, now I get to do it in my own stuff too. That was really awkward one time I was like writing and somebody was like, you've described the Flatiron District so well that it's like you hang out there all the time. And I was like, what? What are the odds? But I think those were some of the main influencers of it, and probably a little bit the hating game.
There was also, I feel like, a lot of, I don't know if this is like the right word, but like Emma Easter eggs in the book. Like, what would you say are some of your like kind of favorite or treasured just like little bits of Emma-isms that you dropped into this?
Probably the Taylor Swift reference. I made a quiet rule with myself that I am going to name drop Spider-Man in every single one of my books, and I did get it into Tweet Cute. Probably just the grilled cheese in general, because that was a sort of thing where in my head I was like, this is either going to work or be really, really weird that I did this about a stolen grilled cheese recipe, because grilled cheese is ostensibly just butter and bread and cheese. Like, it's hard to steal stuff like that. But but I feel like that was something that I was like, it was going to be a burger at first. And I was like, I don't feel emotionally attached to burgers. But I feel very strongly about, as you can see by my emotional support, grilled cheese. I think the fact that it was set on the Upper East Side, because I was like, if I'm going to like sort of jump into this world, like it has to be my world kind of thing. I think those were sort of the main things that I can think of off the top of my head. And Pepper being from Nashville was sort of like a TBT.
All right, so I have to ask, are you writing book number 2? Can we expect a book number 2? Is there anything that you can tell us about book number 2? Good things are coming. They're not announceable yet, but I'm excited about them. So there's my incredibly vague answer about that. There will be food in it. I can say that much. There will be food, and there will be romance, and probably a Spider-Man reference. All right, how do you hope, readers feel after closing the cover on Tweet Cute after finishing this book?
I hope that you feel like you have just finished the best piece of cake that you have ever eaten, and that you liked it so much that you don't want to brush your teeth after.
That is a very precise feeling. All right, so I'm going to do a quick lightning round, and it's going to be junk food themed. And then after that, I'm going to open it up to audience questions. So definitely use this time to percolate on some questions, to think of what you want to ask Emma. Otherwise, it's going to be awkward because I'm out of questions. All right. Junk food lightning round question number 1. What is the best cupcake in New York City?
The Sprinkles peanut butter chocolate chip cupcake.
Okay, that was a lightning answer. Your go-to Taco Bell order?
Oh my gosh. I like to get the soft taco with chicken, but with sour cream added, and a spicy tostada. I really love chips and guac. Sometimes if I'm going real nuts though, I'll get the toasted cheddar chalupa, which I feel like I have to like save for special occasions. And by special occasions, I mean like once every 2 weeks, because I'm in Taco Bell like 3 times a week. So
no like Baja Blast to go with it?
I'm like not like a big like drinks person. Sorry, anybody who was like looking into Tweet Cute for like slushy content. I like milkshakes. I just don't like. I like a big thick ice cream kind of drink.
All right, the dessert featured in Tweet Cute that you most want to recreate.
I guess it was monster cake pretty much from the beginning, and we did do that very successfully, and I have ideas for how to make it better. I feel like I'm like a mad scientist now, where I'm like, we can improve it.
Wait, can you quickly, for people who haven't read the book, just kind of like run through what monster cake is?
So monster cake is a hybrid of funfetti cake, brownies, cookie dough, Rolos, Reese's, Oreos. Am I forgetting anything? And then it's like frosted with googly eyes on it because it's a monster. And it was very perilous to bake because all of those things have different baking times and different temperatures. So we just really kind of played it fast and loose and somehow did not burn the house down, which you're welcome, Mom and Dad.
All right. The dessert in New York City most worth waiting in line for?
Ooh. I think this is like the most basic answer, and I don't have to wait in line for it anymore because they opened the Upper East Side one. But I feel like a Levain cookie just can't get beaten. I would wait forever. Not for true love, but maybe for the Levain cookie.
All right, the number 1 best grilled cheese ingredient besides cheese.
Ooh. How am I supposed to lightning this? I mean, I just really love tomatoes. I'm like a big tomato lady. Like I would just, even in high school, I would like be that kid who brought like a full lunch and then like started like eating a tomato like it was an apple. Making friends.
All right, the best grilled cheese in New York City.
I mean, I'm biased. Everybody makes fun of me because I come out of every movie that I watch and I'm like, that was the best movie ever. And I feel like I come out of every grilled cheese I eat and I was like, that was the best grilled cheese ever. But I really, really liked that one at Eli's Night Shift. It like was like very buttery and very crispy, and it came with like on a bed of like roasted garlic and like the most perfectly crisp pickle next to it, but not like touching the grilled cheese so it didn't infect it, which like, I don't like when they mingle. When I was a kid though, growing up, I was obsessed with the Red Robin grilled cheese off the kids menu, and I tortured my entire family by making them go as often as possible.
All right, last lightning round question. If you had to choose between giving up grilled cheese for a year or giving up cake for a year, which would you choose?
Can you just go and leave for the moon? Like, are you? Is there like a place where you like don't have to, where there are no rules? Man, I think I'd give up grilled cheese for a year because you can get around it. You can be like, this is cheese toast.
It just like doesn't have the second slice of bread.
Yeah, there are like bylaws that you can like get into there.
Just the burger, but no meat.
I did do that growing up. We like rolled into every McDonald's drive-thru and we were like, we would like the burger with just the cheese.
All right. On that note, I'm going to open up the floor to questions, junk food related, novel related, Tom Holland related.
Yeah.
Hi. There are a lot of pop culture references in the book. Two of my favorites include, like, Are You Trying to Parent Trap Me? And Did Uptown Funk You Up? So what were the inspiration of those? Are there any other nuggets in the book? And were you just trying to, insert yourself into the book a little bit?
I think some of that to some degree, I think it was just sort of rolling with 5 a.m. brain, and 5 a.m. brain was like, I've got Uptown Funk stuck in my head. Like, but I think part of it was trying to find things that were like so culturally pervasive that they would feel kind of hyper current, but not so hyper current that like it would isolate like all audience. Like I feel like there was a lot of Mean Girls and a lot of Gossip Girl, because like if I say, or like there, at one point I referenced the Harry Potter "excuse me but who are you" gif, and I feel like most people kind of like, you don't have to see the gif to know what the gif is, like the same way you can be like the Elmo burning fire meme, like it's been around for a while, like people know what it is. So I feel like that was sort of the balance I was trying to strike with those, was like to find something that feels modern, but people still will know what it is because it took like, I wrote the book in March of 2017, and according to the Gregorian calendar, it is 2020 now. so I was kind of had that in mind.
I meant to ask this, and you've clearly thought about it, but did you assign all of your characters Hogwarts houses in your head, or did that sort of come after? I feel like it came after, but I did notice that I have just continued to write Hufflepuffs. Like every character I wrote before that was a Hufflepuff. You can expect more Hufflepuffs. That's the only other spoiler that's coming up is Hufflepuffs ahead. Awesome. Do we have any other questions?
Just because you just mentioned memes, is there any meme that within the past like year that you've just thought and you've been like, oh, I wish I could have added this into the book right now?
I feel like Distracted Boyfriend. I'm sad didn't get in there. I like the text meme that's going around about like the flight attendant where they're like, is there a doctor on board? And like somebody's mom is like, oh, that Susie knows the meme. How does it go?
Can we explain it?
Yes. Can you explain the meme?
So it's a flight attendant and they're like, is there a doctor on board? Like we have someone who needs help, and then like you're there with your parent and it's like, well, I guess I didn't need a social media editor. That we should go over there and tweet about it and see if it helps them. Like, you're not a doctor.
So I'm sad that meme didn't get in there. Other memes. I feel like there are just like some really like existentially fraught memes that are not coming like top of mind right now. I'm sad that Baby Yoda didn't get a shot out and I'm sad that and I did try to sneak him into an edit, but I feel like the hot duck would have been a really fun one to, but I couldn't make myself do it. I was like, maybe he just lives in my heart.
I know, because he was only here for such a brief time. If he had just stayed for another winter.
I keep saying that he will return when we are worthy of him again.
I know. I'm sorry that he hasn't come back.
My son.
All right. I think we have time for one or two more questions. All right. Sure. Okay. Yeah.
In fan fiction, there's like the concept of the alternate universe, like the parallel universe where the characters are the same, but doing something different. What's an alternate universe where Pepper and Jack would feel most at home?
Ooh, that's an excellent question. I feel like probably an Avengers movie, just because I feel like there's just so much of that where the New Yorkers are like, oh, not again. And I just feel like they'd be like really good at just being like get your umbrella out, the sky's raining concrete again. I feel like that's the kind of like Gen Z humor that I wanted in Tweet Cute, I feel like would apply very well to like an Avengers situation. Or maybe I'm just very biased.
Hi. Did you have like a soundtrack that you listened to when you were writing this, or is there like a song that perfectly encapsulates this book?
I weirdly can't remember anything. I listen to a lot of Taylor Swift, but that goes for every book, so I feel like I can't. I feel like the song that I'm sort of most emotionally attached to in terms of this book is there is a song in You've Got Mail that's, I can't remember how, it's sort of toward the end, I think, is I guess the Lord Must Be in New York City. And I've always loved that song because, well, first of all, it's in You've Got Mail, which Tweet Cute was like very heavily influenced by. But my last name is Lord. And so, when I listen to that song, I just am everyone dreams about, moving to New York. And so every time I hear that, I'm like, oh, I am here. Like, I made it. So I think that's probably the song that I love the most in relation to the book.
Hey, Emma.
Hi.
So when you were writing the book for NaNoWriMo, or when you were writing the book at NaNoWriMo Pace, had you already outlined the book? Did you outline the scenes? Are you a plotter or a pantser?
I am usually a pantser. And pantser means that you just start writing and you're like, plot, I'll figure it out. And I'm a fan fiction writer, so that was like my guiltiest pleasure in life, was just being like, oh, I've got an idea and I'm going to start it. And if it ends up being a disaster, you're getting this content for free. So like what are you going to do? But Tweet Cute, I feel like, and I feel like when I'm writing my own stuff, I'm sort of usually a combination of like pantsing and like being semi-responsible and plotting. But with this one, because there were so many aspects of like it being on Twitter and it being in this app and then being in real life, I really had to like, I felt like that thing where he's like in front of the whiteboard, that meme where he's like, that was like me, like trying to like, I remember trying to explain it to Lily the first time, and I was like, so they're on the app, but they're also on Twitter, and like, and also their school, and also the swim and dive team, and like, so I did have to like really heavily plot this one. But I feel like there were some things when I got to them where I was like, oh, this isn't working, and I would shift things as it needed to be. So that was fun.
Hi, Emma.
Hi.
I have a very important question. So when this book inevitably becomes the next cult YA film, who would you like to play Pepper and you can't say Taylor Swift?
Well, now I'm out of answers. I really like the girl who plays Betty in the new Spider-Man movies, which, spoiler alert, everything's related to Spider-Man. But I'm going to mispronounce her name. It reads like Anjali Rice, but I know that she's talked about it before and it's pronounced differently. But she also, like, in real life, like, hosts her own book club and is like extremely Pepper-esque, and so I feel like that would be my sort of like dream pick for Pepper. Yeah, I think that's like the only one I've really like thought about. And I think Jack should be that kid from Anne with an E, if anybody watches it on Netflix. I think he's very good at like doing romantic face when you like look at the girl and you're like, yes, we're in love.
That's
like,
an important look.
Yeah.
I think that the mom should be Laura Dern, but maybe that's because we're in the middle of the Laura Dern craze.
I'll call her. We'll see.
Amazing. Do we have any? I think we have time for one more question if anyone has one. No? Emma Lord in the flesh? You don't have a question? Okay.
Hi, Emma.
Hi.
What's the craziest thing you've ever put in your grilled cheese?
The craziest? I once had a grilled cheese with it wasn't on the grilled cheese, but it was with a side of peanut butter, and it was very good. I hear a lot of, you know what? Don't knock it till you've tried it. They do those peanut butter burgers, and everybody likes those. And I think that there's a place where peanut butter and cheese can live in harmony. We just have to figure it out first.
Also, grilled peanut butter and jellies are also great.
Oh, yes.
Sounds delicious. All right, well, thank you so much for being here today, Emma, and congratulations on Tweet Cute.
Thank
Give
you
her a
guys
round
for
of applause.
coming. Thanks, guys.
I believe you are signing books.
I believe I am.
Yes.
If you guys want to line up on my right, your left side of the room, right over here, with your copies of Tweet Cute, we will have Emma at this table right here. She will sign them. There is still some candy and cupcakes available in the back, and some copies of Tweet Cute if you somehow do not already have one. Again, thank you all for your questions. Thank you, Emma and Cristina, for being here with us, and have a great night.